Good morning, everybody. Welcome. It's the 2nd of April, 2024. We're a quarter of the way through the year, and I couldn't be more excited to see what the rest of the 3 quarters have to offer us. If you're here, then you know what you're here for, and that's to get 1% better. But if you might have forgotten, I'll remind you, this is a pre-market prep session where we go over the important news, notes, trade ideas, analysis that are key to making sure that your money's working harder than you are this week, that you are stacking wins, that you are learning, that you are, extracting the sculpture out of the slab of marble in order to ensure that you're closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be. So I'm your host, Adam Holland, stock options expert market strategist, but most importantly, fellow 1%er, right? Getting 1% better daily, stacking those wins, and also evolving along with the world that is changing around us. As always, you want to throw a 1 in the chat, signifying your intention to get 1% better. We want to get better on purpose. We want to be here for, with a reason. And we want to continue to operate in that reason, in that purpose, so that you can continue to traverse those obstacles, right? Your vision has to be bigger than your obstacles in order for you to keep going. So make sure that you are affirming that vision. You're here on purpose. You're winning on purpose. You're learning on purpose, and then you'll really start to see that manifest. But I'm excited to get into what we got going on this morning. Vivian, good morning. Andrea, good morning. Rob, Malviata, good morning. Coco, good morning. Glad to have everybody here. Hope you had a great night's sleep. I also was able to ascertain that the pain I'm dealing with is not from my teeth, which is awesome. It's something called occipital something or other that I think I hurt, like it's something right behind my ear, but I think that I strained or tweaked this muscle, occipital neuralgia. So I think I tweaked a nerve or a muscle playing pickleball on Easter, which is just that's how you know you're getting old. But there's some nice little clarity because that it's not fun ever dealing with things where you're like, oh no, what do I have to get a root canal or some crap like that? But not the case. Got the heating pad on it, and then might have to see a doc about if it persists. But good to get down to the bottom of it, and that's something that's important in life: getting down to the bottom of your struggles in order to accurately assess them. Because if you keep just freestyling it, thinking that this is the issue or that's the issue, you struggle, right? Consult a professional, get a real diagnosis. You're like, Adam, I'm involved in futures and stocks and stock options and crypto and Forex, and nothing seems to work for me. And it's because you're making movements based off of symptoms and not based off of what the underlying issue is, right? The underlying issue is your mindset or your lack of a system or your lack of communication. Doesn't matter what you do, you're going to struggle with it, right? Especially where the market is concerned. So nailing down what the true impetus is behind your hardships is the first step to solving them. Don't just assume it's one thing or the other, or it's something that you're doing or what have you, right? Work to get to the bottom of it. And if you don't know how to identify that, then work with someone who does in order to get to the bottom of it, right? For everybody within this community, I'm happy to be that resource to you because you pay for the ability to have that, right? So you want to take full advantage of it. So, be that detective for yourself, get down to the bottom of it, and, sort things out when it comes to what it is that's causing you to struggle when it comes to execution, this, that, and the third, right? Nail it down, get rid of it, and level up. Now, in terms of today's news, the Google graveyard, that's our top news. There have been many services killed by Google in recent years, and the latest one is now joining the tech cemetery. Google Podcast is coming to an end today, with users being told to switch their subscriptions to the newly integrated YouTube Music. It's big news for a service that has garnered 500 million downloads since its launch in 2018, allowing users to host, discover, and listen to podcasts. I didn't even know that Google had Google Podcasts. You probably didn't either, and that's why they're closing it down. Behind the decision, YouTube is one of the most frequently visited sites on the web, and Google hopes to capitalize on traffic there to boost its podcast base. It'll also help the tech giant invest all of its podcasting money into one platform, with YouTube offering better brand awareness amid the growing popularity of video podcasts. In addition, YouTube Music features a premium version, which might be incorporated into the podcast experience as inflation-conscious consumers get subscription fatigue for multiple services. I think this is very, very important. Number one, it's not a failure. right? It's a restructuring, a regrouping. I feel like we as people, especially for my entrepreneurs out there or my people that might be entrepreneurs within the company that you work in, right? You either win or you learn. But people look at like Google and Apple and Meta and all, and they're like, oh, these, amazing companies. Failure is quote unquote failure, right? Traditional failure is rampant there, right? It might not succeed in what it started to look like, but it will succeed in a different iteration. You cannot be afraid to pivot based off of the perception of failure. Because at the end of the day, number one, who cares what anyone thinks? They're going to be dust, under a century, right? They're a twinkle in an eye when it comes to the universe. So who gives a crap about their opinion? But number two, if you see the most valuable companies in the world do it, you also must realize that it's important for you, right? So if something is not clicking and there's a struggle, it doesn't even have to be that it's not clicking, but it could be where the world is moving in another direction. You have to be open and available to doing that, right? So some people might come into trading, for example, and be like, oh, I'm going to be a day trader. I'm going to crush it. I'm going to make $100,000 a day. I'm going to make 100 trades a day. And then you realize, oh, I work a job. I've got kids. I've got to commute. Being a day trader might not be what's best for me, but I can make a significant amount of money being a swing trader, right? Focusing on overnight swings, looking at the movement that we had yesterday on SPY, and even swinging spot puts it to today is something that I discussed with a few people before close yesterday. Figure out what works best for you, right? And if what you're doing now is not working, don't be afraid to pivot. It's not a failure. Failure is if you keep doing what you know isn't working. Right? That is failure. You constantly choosing something that you know won't work for you. But whether it is at your company that you work at, or it's a company that you own or whatever, take notes from Google, take notes from Apple. Apple spent billions on self-driving car technology, and they just announced that they're shutting that down, right? It is what it is. No one's going to remember them for that. No one will. No one will be like, oh, Apple, those idiots that spent billions on self-driving cars and it failed. No, they're going to be like, oh, Apple, the multi-trillion-dollar company, right, that dominated the phone market, that changed the world when it came to the introduction of the App Store. Like, that's what they're remembered for. So focus on what you'll remember for, and throw a 2 in the chat if you're in agreement with that, because I feel like there's a lot of failure in this world, and I always try and learn from these big companies, and they are not afraid to freaking cut bait, move on, right? People have short lifespans. It's a very quick news cycle. Like, people have short lifespans in other people's thoughts, right? It's a quick news cycle. Cut it. Google Podcast here, now it's gone, whatever. Focus on YouTube because that's working. I know it because that's something that I found myself indulging in more, especially when hanging out with people, is watching like podcast videos on YouTube, which is like the film of someone having a podcast, right? That has become a much more, that's what the consumer is telling you that they want, right? So they pivot toward that. So don't be afraid to pivot toward what the consumer says that they want. In adjusting your approach as such. But it is most definitely not a failure, because these companies do it. We don't think anything of it, but a person does it, and that person feels like shame and whatnot, or you might judge them, and it's like there's no reason to. The one-stop shop will be Google's fourth iteration of a podcast platform as it looks to turn up the heat on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. There was Google Listen, which shut down in 2012 and was replaced by Google Play Music before Google Podcasts took over for the past 6 years. After today, users in the U.S. will no longer have the ability to stream on Google Podcasts, but can migrate their subscriptions until June, giving extra time for those who may have missed the announcement. Now, in terms of seeking out for podcasts, episodes of Wall Street Breakfast have been available on Google Podcasts. You'll find them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, right? That's just the podcast that goes over this newsletter that we go over every morning and break down. Now, on the move, DJT wipeout. Trump Media, ticker DJT, shares slumped over 20% on Monday, erasing the gains seen since the social media network merged with SPAC Digital World Acquisition Corp. Donald Trump, its biggest shareholder, beneficially held around 57.3% of its outstanding shares, meaning the plunge slashed his stake by $1 billion. Seeking Alpha analysts on the Pulse last week recommended investors sell and take profits on DJT, adding that Trump Media's present market valuation of $6.6 billion, quote, appears wildly inflated. The latest decline also came after Trump Media disclosed a net loss of $58 million in 2023 on $4.1 million in revenue. That'll do it. I doubt anybody was, here seriously invested in DJT. Again, it's in that meme stock category. So if you want to fool around and have fun on it, that's fine. Just understand that moves like this can happen where the stock tanks 20% in a day, and it's not really that unexpected. In terms of ETFs, and I had someone ask me just, on Instagram via DM, like, hey, do you think that DJT is something to watch throughout the election year? If you have spare time, right, focus on things that make you money and make you money consistently, like the long swings that we're cashing out on, right? Breaking down charts, executing on good, high quality plays. Then if you have some extra time, sure, but I would not be hawking DJT just because it's an election year. Yeah, it could go, all over the place. News from Donald Trump and out of Donald Trump's camp can affect it. But I'm not like sitting here like, okay, Donald Trump is now, what did he just start doing last week? Selling Bibles with the Declaration of Independence in the front. Like, oh, Trump is selling Bibles, like DJT is gonna rock it. That is just all complete, like theories and conjecture, and you might as well go down to the casino and just play it that way. So I would never be having this as like a primary watch, even if it is an election year. There are plenty of Fortune 500 companies that have historical patterns of movement and price action during election years that I'd rather bet on rather than this wild card. In terms of ETFs, new fees starting on June 3rd, Fidelity Investments will impose a new $100 servicing charge for 59 ETFs issued by 9 companies to meet the cost of listing these products on its platform. The list, representing less than 0.5% of mutual funds and ETFs on Fidelity's platform, will be periodically updated and is subject to change before the effective date. A bigger item to watch will be whether the number continues to expand amid growing competition that has pushed firms to cut expense ratios. In recent years, ETFs have become more popular than mutual funds, for good reason, resulting in massive inflows and more conversions. Now, automotive news, smartphones to EVs. iPhone maker Apple is stepping back from the market as another smartphone giant hits the accelerator. Xiaomi's first ever electric vehicle SU7 has garnered strong interest from customers, sending its Hong Kong listed shares soaring as much as 16% overnight. It received 88,898 SU7 pre-orders within the first 24 hours of sales and reportedly directed its suppliers to increase production capacity to meet a monthly target of 10,000 cars. China's EV market is increasingly getting crowded, resulting in an intense war that saw the SU7 come with a starting price that was $4,000 less than Tesla's Model 3. That was like, I'm kind of trying to figure out where Apple comes into this. iPhone maker Apple is stepping back from the market as another smartphone giant hits the, I guess, Xiaomi. Yeah, maybe Xiaomi makes phones and then they also make electric vehicles. I think that's what they're trying to insinuate. But for someone that like is not actively from China and familiar with their brands, I feel like they could definitely do a bit better with the transition there between those two sentences, because those seem completely unrelated. But in terms of this news and breaking it down, Chinese native companies do better in China, right? Number one, they're not hindered by government regulation as much as Western-based companies, but also they just know the small little idiosyncrasies and details that appeal to the Chinese customer more than American companies know how. There are a lot of cultural differences, a lot of things like that. And these Chinese companies have that nailed down. So, not surprising that native Chinese companies are doing better than the American native companies operating in China. Tesla has had its difficulties there. Elon seems adamant about trying to stick it out. We'll see if that ends up, being to the detriment of the company or if it ends up getting rewarded. But it is very, very, very tough. Like, American tech companies have not had a good run being successful in China. They're all pretty much forced to tuck tail and run after a certain point. So that would be the expectation that I have for any American, based tech company that's operating there, is that eventually they get run out, because that's just what happens, right? It happened with Uber. You just get ripped off. They make it better for Chinese people, right? And then you get pushed out. In terms of today's markets, a little mixed bag going on in Asia. Japan up 0.1%, Hong Kong up 2.4%, China down 0.1%, India down 0.2%. Footy in London up 0.3, Paris up 0.1, Frankfurt down 0.1, the Dow down 0.4, S&P down 0.3, Nasdaq down 0.3. All of them down a little bit more now. Crude oil up 1.992%. Surprise? Absolutamente nada. Not surprised at all. Oil, go ahead and do your thing. Gold up 1.2%. Bitcoin down 5.1% to 66,000. Don't be surprised by these moves, and also just continue to do your research. I feel like a lot of people are thrown off, like, oh, Bitcoin, the halving, this is supposed to happen, this is supposed to happen. Check how crypto traditionally performs in April, right? Like, just check these things out in order to make sure that your expectations are in the right place. And I'm not a crypto stan, I'm not a crypto bro, but just like, again, people have to have the correct expectations for things. So it's just funny seeing online people are like, oh, Bitcoin is tanking, what's wrong with it? Have you checked how it behaves traditionally during this month? Right? Like, have you done any other research, or are you just expecting to be spoon fed? Right? Get out there. If your money's involved and you worked hard for it and you care about it, make sure you understand what it's doing, why it's doing it, and why you expected it to do it, or why this expectation is mismatched and you need to adjust it. Right? That's what you got to do as just a responsible adult in order to make sure that you're doing the best thing for yourself. And if you're not, then frankly, you don't deserve the returns that you thought you were going to get. Put in the effort. Only takes like 10 seconds to do a Google search, even less to do it using AI, right? And figure out, hey, what is the traditional return of major cryptos like Bitcoin in the month of April, right? Things like that. In terms of today's economic calendar, nothing super important. Yeah, really nothing big happening, which is nice. So we'll wrap up here with our rapid fire stock news rundown. Let's see here. CSX, ticker CSX, adds new rail service to avoid Baltimore port closure. So we're seeing companies adjust here. Antitrust woes Microsoft to unbundle Teams and Office. Health insurer stocks slide on Medicare Advantage payment update. Report China opposes arbitrarily revised U.S. chip export rules. Mexico said to cut some crude exports as global supplies tighten. FedEx lost USPS contract to UPS. Should traders be worried? I mean, that is significant. It's a pretty big chunk of business there. Florida Supreme Court allows adult use cannabis bill to go to ballot. EV bust, Canoe raises, going concern, doubts amid cash crunch, and then the most shorted S&P 500 stocks as a percentage of float. So, trying to get some of the short squeeze bros interested there with that headline. But look, guys, this is what we got going on here for this beautiful day, April 2nd, 2024. Again, a quarter of the year we're done with, but we've got 3 quarters left. Make sure that you take that time to do what you need to do and continue to push forward 1% better each day. We've got the majority of the year ahead of us. So who cares how that first quarter went for you? Focus on these next 3 quarters in leveraging all of the amazing tools that 2024 has to offer now to make you more productive, more bankable, right, when it comes to making money, and overall happier. Use these different tools that are available in order to just let you live a more fulfilling life. So whether that is in markets, which there are a lot of tools coming out to help you in markets, and more strategies and things become available every day, or that is with these different AI tools that are coming out that have personally made my life a lot easier. Make sure you're spending some time learning both of those things, right? Because whether you're an accountant, an Uber driver, a teacher, there are all these different tools right now that are being put in place to make your life so much easier, and also make you look so much better in comparison to your coworkers, so that when the time comes around where they're looking to say, okay, who do we keep, who do we let go, they're like, this person gets this done very effectively. They cranked out 30 different lesson plans, right? They're always on time with this, that, and the third. And they came up with something that actually helped all of the teachers get their grading done quicker based off of this tool that they use and they put us onto, right? That makes you a hero at your job, right? And within your company, it makes it easier for you to grow and run your company if it's a small company. So all these different tools, just put in a little bit of work each day toward learning them, and they'll definitely pay off astronomically. But I'll wrap it up there, guys. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for our next Premarket Prep session. As we continue to drop these nuggets in all areas of life to close the gap between where we are and where we want to be. Have a great rest of the day. I'll see you back here tomorrow morning. Peace.